This week's 48 Hours reports on a decades-old murder case that eventually led investigators to a man known as the Zombie Hunter. In the 1990s, two young women were murdered while riding their bikes in Phoenix, Arizona. Their cases remain unsolved for decades. Then, using genetic genealogy, investigators narrowed it to a suspect, a local celebrity who was known for dressing like a zombie hunter. Here's a look at Peter Van Sant's report.
There are not many crimes that are like this one. You had women riding bicycles along the canal on a typical Phoenix evening, ambushed, stabbed multiple times.
Brianna Whitney, the true crime reporter for the CBS affiliate KPHO in Phoenix, says the first victim was 21-year-old Angela Brasso, whose body was found in November 1992.
Police are looking at this scene and thinking, what on earth happened and who did this?
10 months later, the body of 17-year-old high school student Melanie Burness was found in one of the city's canals. Investigators found the same DNA at both scenes, but had no match, says Detective Clark Schwarzkopf.
I think there was over 600 persons of interest.
After some 20 years, investigators zeroed in on 42-year-old Brian Patrick Miller, a divorced father raising his teenage daughter.
Seeing him with his daughter, I just don't see this guy as being the monster in 1992 and 93 that would do this to these women.
But as Schwarzkopf soon learned, Miller had a unique alter ego.
Everybody in the Phoenix area knew Brian Patrick Miller as this character called the Zombie Hunter.
The Zombie Hunter.
The Zombie Hunter.
Like a comic book character?
Yeah, like a comic book character.
Miller dressed in a homemade costume and drove a tricked-out former police car.
People wanted to take pictures with him, including law enforcement officers.
Schwarzkopf was skeptical, but the detective secured Miller's DNA. Days later, the head of the forensic lab had some news.
She leans down to me, she goes, "It's him." I go, "What?" She goes, "Brian Miller, it's him."
It was like he was hiding in plain sight.
Wow. Peter Van Sant joins us right now. So how did they zero in on him as the suspect, the main suspect?
So the cold case unit came up with the name Miller when they looked through all of these files, and they brought in a genetic genealogist, and they had the DNA of the murderer. That genealogist took this DNA and did the magic that they do these days and ended up coming up with 6 names of people who lived in the southwest of the United States who had the last name Miller. One of them was Brian Miller, who lived in Phoenix. And so they do an undercover operation. They lure him to a Chili's restaurant, offer him a burger and something to drink. He takes a sip from the glass. They have the DNA from that. It goes off to the lab. Some days later, it comes back, and it's the man who is the zombie hunter known all throughout Phoenix, living out in the open.
Plain sight. And even the
He's
cops
the
liked him.
There's pictures. We have all these pictures of cops with him. They had no idea who they were standing next to.
I'm always blown away, Peter, when you see people who do this who have daughters of their own. There's a part of me that just thinks you have a little girl, you just couldn't possibly do that to another woman. That always surprises me. But why did he dress up as that zombie hunter dude in the first place? What was he doing?
He was a horror film fanatic. All his friends, that's what they did, is they watched these kinds of films. And he became a zombie. This was 21 years after the murders. What do zombies do? They're the undead. They are relentlessly violent.
I don't know. What
They're relentlessly violent, and I think there was something about that made him become this character. Yeah.
Oh,
but
man.
I mean, people who had seen this car driving all over town, not realizing it was a killer.
I'm curious to hear what he has to say now, Brian.
Yeah, and that's...
He claims he has no memory of any of these murders.
That's why we should tune in. You can see Peter's full report, Unmasking the Zombie Hunter, on 48 Hours tomorrow night at 10, 9 Central here on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.